Welcome back. Pricing. How much does price truly drive your decision when you're going to purchase a product or not? Well, a lot more comes into it than just the price, my friend, I'm sure. Have you ever considered the overall value, or if you're loyal to the brand? Today we're going to look at some of these and see how companies align the pricing as well as the value that they're bringing to consumers. So how value determines price, kind of taking a look at it here, we've got the founders of Instagram. And as many of you may watch, there's a TV show Shark Tank as well, where they take a look at price and say, how much would you evaluate your company for? So, many people give a valuation estimate, and that's often controversial and tested back and forth. So in this example, Instagram, private company, was bought by Facebook for $1 billion last year. Pre-revenue company, peanuts on the income statement, a small office in Silicon Valley with about 12 people. So what is it in terms of why would Facebook pay that much? Did they see more than we could see that was in the books? The value behind it, what Instagram would become, as well as the generations that follow, and how visually compelling the world has become. So Facebook saw this ahead of time, bought Instagram. Next up, if you continue to watch Facebook, you'll see other companies that they have bought up. WhatsApp, in terms of messaging apps, they've also purchased that, as well as Oculus Rift, augmented reality. So if you look at some of these giants in the industries, you can see based on what they're buying up, if there's a potential to really look at that company for more value than what it really is in today in terms of the books that it showcases. So the 5 C's, all more acronyms, but 5 C's are on pricing, which involve at the core overall value. The competition. Looking at the competition to determine pricing and how you're going to cost things. Overall general costs to develop the product and bring it to marketplace. The company objectives, the customers, and of course channel members. Channel members that increase the cost along the way and will impact your overall final cost to the consumers. All of these come into play when we're looking at pricing. So looking at the first C, considering this, company objectives. Is the company more profit oriented? Looking at that, and what type of level of profit orientation. Company-wide may say every single product we developed has to at least have 18% profit. So what does that mean, and how does that impact products? Versus a company that looks at it more sales oriented, set prices very low, more volume focused. Think of it along the lines of EDLP, everyday low price. Walmart is famous for that. Or a company that's maybe more competitor oriented, wants to be either the best price or very, very low and lowball it into the marketplace so other competitors can't even compete. But what does that say about the value of your product when it's the cheapest? Does it have the best value? That's something to consider. Looking at it from customer oriented, the market segment, highly valuable particular product, and price is relative. So considering premium pricing, consider that 80-20 split. When a high upscale product, such as a high-end watch or a high-end car or whatever, that 20% of the market actually makes up 80% of the sales, and there may be something based on that customer segment that you're going to price it accordingly to that. If all of a sudden you were selling a Jaguar for the same cost that you would sell a Dodge Dart, the value would definitely be questioned in that aspect. So profit orientation, target return pricing, 3 key pieces: target profit pricing and maximizing profits. So looking at it when your company is core in terms of profit orientation. So that's that first example showcased, 18% profit on any product that we have. It's got to always be 18%. These are some of the quadrants that they look at. Sales orientation, focusing on increasing sales. Looking at it from, does not always imply setting low prices, but really selling and moving as much inventory as possible. More concerned with overall market share. When you sell more product, you may have a larger share of voice. It may not be the strongest and the most financially set, but you may have more people utilizing it, therefore a larger SOV. Competitor orientation, considering it, thinking about when you have competitors and how on parity are you, how similar are you, but then what's your points of differentiation? Where are the competitors going? Do you just do status quo pricing where it's across the board? Do you differentiating? You really look at value when you're considering this, not in competitive pricing. You're really on a different front when you're kind of considering that, but value always has to be focused on because that's what the consumer is focusing on. Customer orientation, expectations by matching prices to customer expectations. So what's your expectation when you go on a luxurious vacation and you stay at the Ritz-Carlton versus when you go a quick trip with friends and maybe stay at the Red Carpet Inn? different experiences, different assumptions in terms of value, and different types of aspects in terms of what you would pay for that experience. Consider that. Apple pricing. Consider the cost of apples. When they first came in, once again, from last chapter, we talked about the first and foremost, not early adopters, they're innovators. And thinking about those innovators and how many of them were purchasing and how many of them, for the first time ever to have an Apple iPhone, would have paid and did pay $500. Back in the day in 2008 or before that, that is still an incredible amount of money for companies and for consumers to take that chance and that risk to actually pay that, because they would have the latest and the greatest product, is something that really, really distinguishes a brand and really showcases them being first to market versus waiting to work out all the kinks. And there's people such as early adopters that are always waiting for these first to market products. As of course we look at the demand curve, when price decreases, oftentimes demand increases. So how is that going to impact a company? How is that going to impact the overall perception, the value, supply and demand, what supply you have, based on how much demand, based on the fact that you've now lowered the price. All of these pieces have to be taken into consideration. So esteemed products different. So not all products or services have upward slopes. So considering it that way, from overall esteemed products, think about that Jaguar, think about that Rolex, think about that price, where that cost is going to be consistent, if not higher, and where your profit margins are truly increasing, but the overall services and products, the services that you may get, may not be at the same point. It's got that different cachet, it's got that different level and segment that they're involved in. Price elasticity. So elastic, when consumers are sensitive to price, versus inelastic, when they're not sensitive. So when are consumers not sensitive to price? Maybe when they're loyal. Think about products that you buy all the time, or brands every day when you get Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or wherever. And are you even aware when it changes, when the price of a cup of coffee goes from $3.50 to $3.55? You may be completely inelastic because that doesn't impact, because you're buying the cup of coffee. Now if it changed a 50-cent change, 50 cents or more, that may be a really polarizing change for you to assess and consider. But these small little incremental changes, oftentimes consumers that are loyal can be price inelastic, really not sensitive to that. Versus elastic, where you are sensitive to certain things. Products that you're not completely loyal to, or products that you need on a that have points of parity, you can choose other products. So let's say it's paper towels. Let's say whichever one, and maybe every time you buy Bounty paper towels, but all of a sudden Bounty paper towels have gone up 25 cents. You may look to get the generic, because paper towels, in terms of you don't want to spend that much, the value is not there, and you feel that another product could swap out and do the same thing. Points of parity versus points of differentiation. It comes into play in pricing as well. Consumers are less sensitive to price, increases for necessities. So, in what circumstance will raising the price not result in an increase of revenue? Elastic markets, depending on elasticity. Price increase can increase revenue, but if increase drives consumers out of the market, then the demand falls. So remember that it has to be a balance between price and value, demand and supply as well. In what circumstances will raising the price result in an increase of revenue? Contrast, an elastic price increase always increases revenue, clearly, because the relationship between price and demand is weak. Pharmaceutical provides a great example, and unfortunately, they can continue to raise the price of drugs, specifically cancer drugs, until a cure is found. Patients will always need this, and therefore deal with and accept the price of the product, whatever it is, just because of what it's providing. That help, that solution. Not a cure yet, but because of it, pharmaceuticals are in a very special segment as it relates to pricing. Factors influencing price elasticity of demand. So here's a few different ones in terms of income effect, obviously. Substitution effect and cross-price elasticity. So in terms of overall income coming in for the product, if that product can be substituted, if it's on a point of parity, if it's something that you are not completely consumer loyal to. So think of these general items, whether it's paper towels, napkins, things that can be swapped in and out, and that's when price sensitivities can occur when you have a normal product, and if the product if the product's price is increased and you can find a substitution pretty easily, that's when price elasticity really takes into play. And the costs. Obviously, there's three different types of costs. You've got variable costs, so that's going to vary within production volume, and that'll change based on certain products, versus fixed costs, your core costs all the time, and then overall your sum of costs, which is variable and fixed costs. So looking at those in terms of what cost it takes to bring that product to market, and then you also obviously look at all the different players in it, the channel members that may add to that cost, and what's that total cost, that final cost that comes to you, and where's the markup for you to really create that profit that you're looking for, but for it to be digestible for the consumers that you're marketing to, and for them to really not view it as sensitivity in terms of price, but overall just understanding the loyalty of it and them being loyal for your brand and price not becoming an issue. Break even. So behind every marketing campaign, the three letters behind it, ROI, return on investment. So obviously break even Steven, you break even, that's great, but we always want to have an ROI. So for every dollar spent, love to make $2 back. That's a solid ROI. Or there's even better ones. So consider even some companies that have sold themselves. For every dollar they spent, they made $50 on that dollar. So consider that, but ROI is really critical. Break even at the least, but a lot of times when you do research and proper planning and understanding the marketplace and competitive place, oftentimes you can supersede even break even. But starting out as break even is probably the best place to start if you're not starting with profit, as long as you're not starting behind the scenes. And competition. So considering the aspects of competition, whether it's a monopoly and one firm controls the market, an oligopoly, a handful, monopolistic, or pure competition. Considering all those, how many firms are involved in companies, what the competitors look like, what you as a company do, and how you really differentiate, and how your pricing is going to be impacted from that. And channel members. So considering channel members and different ones that help along the way, whether it's channel members that get your product in front of the consumer, or other channel members that are out there that actually provide access to consumers that may not be above board, considering this and how that impacts your overall cost. Think about it this way. Think about textbooks and how many ways there are to purchase textbooks. You can purchase it from the publisher, from the core publisher. You can have a textbook or an ebook. But think about it from the standpoint of all the other ways that you can get textbook. You can get used textbooks. You can get textbooks with answers in them. So a little bit more of an illegal way. And when students buy those textbooks and they're of a lesser price, that impacts the rest of the industry in terms of not just they didn't get the same exact book that they required, but also it really levels down the overall price and has a bigger impact than you can imagine. And EDLP, as we mentioned, creating value in different ways. Saving search. When someone says everyday low price, they can guarantee it will match any other price. That's what Walmart really built its foundation on. So kind of looking at it from that standpoint. High-low providing, it's another concept which provides the thrill of the chase, the highest, thrill of the chase in terms of finding the lowest price possible. So a lot of these and couponing and other aspects have come into play where consumers really take this as somewhat of a strategy in terms of shopping and purchases. And new pricing strategies, considering the market penetration pricing. If you're going to open a new t-shirt shop in Blacksburg and you're going to sell Hokie t-shirts, would you say this market is saturated with t-shirt stores? I would think so. So consider how you're going to price those t-shirts. Maybe you're going to go really low because you really want to have the lowest t-shirts, but you want to have a large share of voice. If you price them high, you've got to have some real value behind that product. So maybe you're going to price them high because these t-shirts are the only ones that have a famous football player that signed them, along those lines. So think about those differentiation. And then look at price skimming as well. What's a price skimming example? Consider the fine upscale chocolate of Godiva. And now think of Godiva, who's created now Godiva Hot Chocolate, utilizing their name to come into another, to expand their brand into another category, hot chocolate, but still having to pay for the price of the Godiva name. So normally hot chocolate in terms of some of the other brands, Swiss Miss, etc., maybe $2, Godiva maybe $7 because you're price skimming. You're utilizing that name to leverage the overall brand. Legal aspects, so of course in everything, integrity and ethics. Deceptive or illegal price advertising, advertising price, actually having consumers go in and not delivering on that promise, predatory pricing, price fixing and price discrimination. So the Big Mac Index, looking at this a little bit further. So basically this is an overall lighthearted guide to currencies and making sure they're all at the same level. So at one point the Big Mac was looked at and said, whatever the price of the Big Mac is in the US, it should across currencies be a similar price. And a lot of times from a global exchange rate, and adjust to make it kind of identical baskets with all these different goods. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Because what's right and wrong? So law of one price. Big Mac should cost the same across different markets. The fact is, the case suggests currencies are over undervalued. So should Big Mac really, what is the price of meat in one country versus another? That's going to differ. Your overall costs are going to deliver. So actually, if a Big Mac in the United States costs $3, should it be the equivalent in terms of what your exchanging currency is in another country? Is that fair to the country? Maybe their variable costs are higher. Maybe their fixed costs are higher. So in a lot of instances, this does not work as well. Is it a reliable indicator? To a certain extent, yes. To standardize a product and look at it from a Big Mac perspective, yes it is. But no, emerging economies, fast food represents an expensive niche. So think about BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and considering fast food where it could be more of a luxury item. There's McDonald's that are in China that are high-level restaurants that have cloth napkins and silverware and have a real experience. So it does not across the board. It's not a cookie-cutter answer, and therefore overall my vote would be no to the Big Mac Index. Does not really respond to all the needs of every market. And alternative pricing strategies, a different one. So considering cost plus, the cost of manufacturing plus a little profit margin, target profit, to achieve specific percentage of profit, what overall your margin is. So whatever that target profit is, what you really want to target, you've got a certain percentage. Profit oriented, like 18% on every product. Then considering break even, covering costs, break even, creating the product, whatever behind the scenes, creating it, pricing it, and making sure at least you're breaking even for everything. Sealed bidding, B2B, more house purchases, and then internet-based, which is constantly surfing the internet for the best possible price available. And then illegal, gray market, dumping, price fixing, so any of the different things, whether it's booksellers that come and provide discounted books to you, or vacation rentals that go below the radar and do some things. If it sounds unethical and illegal, it probably is. And in terms of pricing, you should always buyer beware in terms of paying for what you get, and sometimes the fine print tells a lot as well. But these are all specific cases you should be looking into and considering. And that is it for pricing and establishing value. Take a look at some products today. See how much you purchased your water for today, or a special product. Did you notice any increase in price? And if that price did increase, would you continue purchasing it? These and many other things I hope you're considering to look at, as well as continuing reading the text and going beyond. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.